I never thought I'd see the day when I would take off my wedding ring and hand it to a stranger. But there I was, standing in front of the grimy counter of the pawn shop, the weight of the gold band in my palm feeling heavier than I could bear. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside, my boots leaving muddy tracks on the faded floor. The smell of old leather and dust hit me immediately, a sharp reminder of how far I'd fallen. I glanced around at the other items in the glass display cases, other people's memories, their once precious possessions now abandoned for the same reason as mine. Life had become too hard. Now my wedding band was about to join them. I looked back through the dirty window, my eyes falling on Lily, my 7-year-old daughter. She stood on the sidewalk, her small hands shoved deep into her coat pockets, pretending not to notice. She knew what I was doing. She just didn't want to watch me surrender the last piece of the life we used to have. The life where I was someone who had promises, someone who believed in forever. I placed the ring on the counter, and the clerk barely looked up. He didn't smile. He didn't judge. He simply picked it up, tapped it against the glass, and gave me a number, $140. I could feel my heart sink as I took the cash. That ring wasn't just gold. It was a reminder of the man I used to be. A man who believed in love, in marriage, in forever. A man who wasn't just trying to get by, but was still chasing something bigger, something better. Now, it felt like that man was gone. I left the pawn shop, the door closing behind me with a finality that hit me harder than I'd expected. As I walked back to Lily, she didn't say anything. She just looked up at me with those big brown eyes, her trust in me unwavering. She didn't cry, not like I thought she might. She never did. She simply reached for my hand, and together we walked in silence. We passed the closed stores and the bar that always seemed to be open. We walked past the church where Lily went to Sunday school because it was free, and sometimes, if we were lucky, they'd save her a donut. At home, I counted the bills on the kitchen table. Rent was overdue, the electricity bill was next, and our old truck had broken down last week. My heart sank as I realized there was no way to pay for everything. But at least we'd have food tonight. At least we'd survive another day. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep on the pull-out couch we shared, I sat there, staring at my bare left hand. The ring was gone, but its weight still lingered. It wasn't just about the gold. It was about the promise, the man I had been, the man who had believed in more than just surviving. The man who had once dreamed of a future where I could provide for my daughter, and everything would somehow fall into place. Now it felt like a ghost of that man remained, hovering in the shadows of my empty home. 2 days later, I took Lily to the grocery store. We walked the aisles together, comparing prices, calculating every cent. She reached for a box of colorful cereal, and I guided her hand toward a plain one. She didn't protest. She trusted me, even when life felt impossible. Then, I saw her, a woman, standing at the end of the aisle. She didn't belong here, not in this run-down store. Her jeans were perfectly pressed, her gray sweater simple, but there was something about the way she moved that told me she wasn't from here. She was different. She looked like someone who had spent her life navigating a world I could never understand. And yet, when our eyes met, something flickered. Recognition, maybe? Or curiosity. She watched me. Watched how I interacted with Lily, how I treated her with respect and care. There was something in her eyes that made me feel seen. She didn't say anything. She just watched. And for the first time in a long while, I wondered if I was still worthy of being seen. I didn't think much of it at the time, but that encounter stayed with me, nagging at the back of my mind. Who was she? What did she see in me? And why did it matter so much? I didn't have the answers then. All I knew was that the weight of the gold band had disappeared, but a new weight had settled in its place, the weight of trying to figure out what came next. I spent the next few days feeling like I was walking in a fog. Every step forward felt like a struggle, like I was climbing a mountain that kept getting steeper. The truth was, I had no idea how to get out of this mess. The bills, the pawned ring, the feeling that everything I tried was just a half step forward before slipping back into the same old cycle. Then, something happened. I was sitting at the kitchen table one morning going over job applications when I heard a soft knock on the door. It was so quiet, I almost didn't hear it. At first, I thought it might be some charity worker or someone selling something. But when I opened the door, there she was, again, the woman from the grocery store. Claire! I froze for a moment, unsure what to say. Can I help you? I finally asked, even though I knew the answer was no. What can I offer her? She smiled politely, though it wasn't the kind of smile I had expected. It wasn't like she was here to fix my life. It was just gentle, like she saw right through the facade I had put up. I hope I'm not bothering you, she said, her voice calm, almost like she wasn't used to being a bother. I wanted to make sure you're okay. I shook my head, confused. Why would you care? Quote. Her eyes softened as she looked past me, at Lily, who was sitting at the kitchen table, coloring quietly. Because you're trying so hard, she said simply, and I think you deserve a little help. I stood there, staring at her. Help? I repeated, my mind racing. I don't need charity. She nodded, as if she had expected that response. I'm not here to give charity. I'm here because I think I can help you find your way. You just need someone to point you in the right direction. I didn't know what to make of her words. A part of me wanted to shut the door in her face. I wasn't some charity case. But another part of me, the part that had been struggling in silence for so long, found her words oddly comforting. It wasn't like she was offering a handout. She was offering something different. Listen, she said, stepping closer. I've been there. I've watched people work hard and still fall short. But there are programs, there are ways to get ahead, to keep your head above water. I didn't know what she was talking about. The weight of responsibility, the rent, the truck, the medical bills for Lily, was a constant pressure on me. It made everything feel impossible. How could anyone fix that? How could Claire fix that? I'm not asking for anything, she added, as if she could read my mind. Just give me a chance to help you. Look at these. She handed me a small stack of papers. Job listings, links to financial aid for Lily's medical bills, even some information about a local vocational training program. I stared at the papers, completely stunned. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, she said softly, taking a step back. I just want you to know there's more out there than just surviving. I didn't know what to say. This was so far from what I had ever expected. A complete stranger, offering help without asking for anything in return. It felt so foreign, so vulnerable. But somewhere deep inside, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been too focused on just getting through each day that I had stopped looking for ways to actually move forward. I'll think about it, I said, still holding the papers in my hand, the weight of them somehow feeling heavier than the ring had. She smiled, and there was something so genuine in that smile that it made my chest tighten. That's all I ask, she said, then turned and walked away. I watched her go, standing there for a few moments, trying to wrap my head around everything she had just said. I could feel Lily's eyes on me. She didn't say anything, but I could see the questions in her gaze. What was that about, Daddy? She asked quietly, her voice small but full of curiosity. I didn't know how to explain it. So I simply sat down beside her and said, I think we just got a little help, Pumpkin. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. The next few days were a blur. I spent hours sorting through the papers Claire had given me. Some of the programs looked too good to be true. Financial assistance, job opportunities that actually paid well, and training programs that could help me turn my life around. I was skeptical, but there was a part of me that was starting to believe in the possibility that things could get better. I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was being helped by someone who didn't owe me anything, someone who just cared. But every time I tried to move forward, something held me back. Pride, mostly. I wasn't the kind of man who asked for help. I wasn't the kind of man who depended on others, not after everything I'd been through. It was my fight, my struggle, and I would figure it out on my own. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I kept pushing through my days, doing my best to get by, But life had a way of reminding me just how hard it could be. Lily and I walked past the same old buildings, the same empty storefronts, and I couldn't help but think about how little had changed. The rent was still overdue. The truck still wouldn't start. And even though I was trying my best, I was still falling short. One afternoon, after another fruitless job interview, I was walking back to the apartment with Lily when I saw Claire again. She was sitting on a bench at the park, sketching something in a notebook. It was one of those moments when everything else fades away, and all that matters is that one person sitting quietly, waiting for you to notice them. I approached cautiously, unsure of what to say. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "You're here," she said, her voice soft but not surprised. Like she had expected me to show up eventually. "Yeah," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. "I was. Thinking about what you said, about the help, about the programs." She nodded, as if she knew exactly what I was going to say next. "And?" I hesitated. "I'm just not sure. I don't want to be the guy who takes handouts. I don't want to feel like I owe anyone anything." Claire closed her notebook and set it aside, giving me her full attention. "You're not taking a handout, Ethan. You're taking a chance. You're not letting yourself drown because someone offered you a lifeline." I swallowed hard. I had been so focused on surviving that I had forgotten what it felt like to move forward. "I don't know how to do that," I admitted, my voice quiet. "I've been stuck for so long. I don't know what it's like to be more than this." Claire stood up from the bench and walked over to me. She wasn't offering me a solution, wasn't trying to fix me. She was simply present, quietly understanding. "You don't have to know everything, Ethan," she said gently. "You just have to be willing to try. One step at a time." And in that moment I realized something important. I had been so afraid of failing that I hadn't allowed myself to try again. I had spent so much time holding on to what I thought was the only way to live that I hadn't considered that there could be another way. A way where I could actually thrive, not just survive. "I'll do it," I said finally, the words feeling like they had been stuck in my throat for weeks. "I'll give it a shot." Quote, Claire's smile was small, but it was the kind of smile that made you believe things could change. "Good," she said, her voice full of quiet encouragement. "I knew you would." The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind. I started signing up for the programs Claire had mentioned. Some of them seemed too good to be true, but I pushed my doubts aside. I figured I had nothing to lose. I filled out forms, attended orientations, and slowly, the pieces of my life started shifting in small, barely noticeable ways. It wasn't easy. In fact, it felt like I was moving in slow motion. But every day, I took another step forward. I had my first interview at a manufacturing company, and although I wasn't expecting much, something inside me told me to give it my all. I had no formal training, no solid work history in the industry, but I was willing to learn. I showed up on time, dressed in my best clothes, and gave them everything I had. The day I received the call back, I could barely believe it. I was offered the job, a starting position in industrial maintenance. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start, a real steady job with benefits. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just scraping by. I was building something, even if it was small and fragile. That night, when I came home, I couldn't wait to tell Lily. She was sitting at the kitchen table, doing her homework, her small face serious as she wrote. When I walked in, she looked up at me, her eyes full of curiosity. "I got the job," I said, unable to keep the excitement out of my voice. Her eyes widened, and she immediately jumped up, running over to me. "You did?" she asked, grinning from ear to ear. She hugged me tight, her little arms wrapping around my waist. "That's awesome, Daddy!" I hugged her back, feeling a weight lift from my chest. This was for her, for us. We had made it through another hurdle, and I was one step closer to giving her the life she deserved. Over the next few days, I started adjusting to my new routine. The job wasn't easy, but it was steady. It gave me a sense of pride, a feeling that maybe I could finally get out of the hole I'd been in for so long. Every paycheck felt like a small victory, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I was treading water, but at least I wasn't sinking. But even with all this progress, something was still missing. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more I was supposed to be doing. I kept thinking about Claire. She had been there, in the background, quietly making things happen, and I had never properly thanked her. I didn't know how to repay her for everything she had done, everything she had quietly set into motion. Then, one evening, as I walked home from work, I saw her sitting on the same bench at the park. This time, she wasn't sketching in her notebook. She was just sitting there, looking out at the horizon. I hesitated, but something inside me told me this was the moment. I walked over to her, feeling a little nervous. She looked up when she saw me coming, and her face lit up with that familiar, understanding smile. "Hey," I said, standing a little awkwardly in front of her. I just wanted to thank you." She raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Thank me? For what?" "For everything," I said, sitting down beside her. "For all the help you've given us. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled softly, her gaze meeting mine. "You did it, Ethan. All I did was point you in the right direction. You're the one who took the steps." I shook my head, still not fully understanding. "But you made it possible. You gave me the chance to believe things could change." Claire looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting a small piece of paper nervously. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she said quietly. "I just saw you, and I wanted to help." And in that moment, I realized something. Claire didn't see me as some broken, desperate man. She saw me for who I was, a father doing his best for his daughter. She didn't offer me pity. She offered me the chance to change, to rebuild, to grow. She didn't try to fix me. She just gave me the space to do it on my own. "You've done more than you'll ever know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You've made me believe again. In myself, in the future, in us." She smiled, but there was something different about it this time. It wasn't just the smile of someone offering help. It was the smile of someone who had seen something in me that I hadn't seen in myself. "You don't need to thank me," she said softly. "Just keep moving forward. That's all I want for you." And just like that, everything felt different. For the first time, I wasn't just trying to survive. I was actually living. Life began to settle into a new rhythm, one that felt more like a steady pulse than the frantic chaos I'd been living in before. The job was hard, but it was fulfilling. Each day, I was learning something new, something that made me feel like I wasn't just marking time. I was building a future. The financial pressure was still there, of course, but with each paycheck I felt a little more hopeful. The debt was still there, the bills still piled up, but I had a plan now. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. Lily seemed to sense the change, too. She was still the same little girl, bright-eyed, full of curiosity, and always finding joy in the small things. But there was a lightness in her step now, a bounce in her voice that hadn't been there before. It was as if the weight of worry that had been hanging over us for so long was starting to lift. And then came the day when everything seemed to come full circle. I was walking home from work, my mind preoccupied with the usual thoughts: what bills to pay, what food to buy, how to make sure we didn't fall behind again, when I saw Claire sitting on that same bench in the park. But this time, she wasn't just sitting quietly. She was holding something in her hand, something small and delicate. When she saw me, she stood up, her face unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled, that soft smile that always seemed to make everything feel just a little easier. "I was hoping I'd see you today," she said, her voice calm. "I have something for you." Quote. I raised an eyebrow, unsure what she meant. "For me?" She nodded, walking toward me and handing me a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat as I took it from her, not knowing what to expect. When I opened the box, I saw it, my wedding ring. It had been cleaned and polished, but it was unmistakably the same one I had sold months ago. I froze, staring at it, in disbelief. "Claire, I started, but my words caught in my throat. She shook her head, her expression gentle but firm. "I didn't want you to think I was doing this to fix you or to make you feel indebted. I just thought, it's yours. It belongs to you." I held the ring in my hand, turning it over, feeling the weight of it once again. It wasn't just about the gold. It wasn't even about the marriage. It was about what that ring had come to represent. Loss, hope, survival. And now, it was back in my hands. Not as a reminder of failure, but as a symbol of the journey I had been on. I looked up at Claire, my chest tight with emotion. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You didn't have to do this." Quote, "I know," she said softly, "but sometimes things are meant to come full circle." For a long moment, I just stared at the ring, not knowing what to do with it. But then, something clicked. I didn't need to wear it. I didn't need it to remind me of who I was. Instead, I placed it in the small wooden box on Lily's nightstand, where it had been sitting for months. And in that moment, I knew. The ring wasn't just a symbol of the past anymore. It was a part of me that had helped shape who I had become. A man who had made mistakes but had learned from them. A man who had fought through the hardest times for his daughter. A man who wasn't afraid to ask for help, even when it meant being vulnerable. That night, as I sat with Lily on the couch, reading her favorite bedtime story, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The weight of the past wasn't gone, but it didn't have to define me anymore. I wasn't defined by the mistakes I had made or the hardships I had faced. I was defined by the choices I was making now, by the person I was becoming. And when I tucked Lily into bed, her small hand resting in mine, I knew that we were going to be okay. Not because everything was perfect, but because we had each other. And that was enough. The days that followed were full of quiet but profound changes. I woke up every morning to a new sense of purpose. The job at the manufacturing plant was still tough, but I started taking pride in my work, in the fact that I was learning and growing. I wasn't just getting by anymore. I was moving forward. Lily's laughter filled the apartment in a way that made it feel less like a place we were just surviving in, and more like a home. Every day after school, she would race through the door, her backpack bouncing behind her, her face lit up with the kind of joy I had missed. Her small hands would grab mine, and we would talk about everything. Her day at school, the books she was reading, the little things that seemed so ordinary but meant the world to me. And then there was Claire. Her presence in our lives had become a steady, comforting thing. She didn't push, didn't try to fix everything. She was just there, showing up when it mattered most, like a quiet support that didn't ask for anything in return. I could tell that something had changed in her, too. There were no more walls between us, no more hesitation. She had helped me, yes, but more than that, she had given me the space to help myself. And in doing so, she had shown me that it was okay to accept support without feeling weak, without feeling like I had failed. One Saturday morning, as I walked to the park with Lily, I spotted her sitting on the same bench where we had first talked. It wasn't the first time we'd met there, but there was something different about today. The air felt lighter. The world outside our little bubble seemed a little brighter. I sat down beside her, and for the first time I wasn't filled with doubt or worry. "How's everything?" she asked, glancing up at me. "Good," I said, a genuine smile pulling at the corners of my mouth. "It's good, really good." She nodded, as if she had known all along that this moment was coming. "I'm glad to hear that." Quote, I watched Lily running ahead, her laughter echoing through the park. She was growing up, becoming more independent every day. And as I sat there with Claire, I realized that my life was no longer just about surviving. It was about living. It was about building something real with the people who mattered most. "You know," I said, my voice a little hesitant but filled with sincerity, "I never thought I'd get to this point. I thought I'd always be stuck. But here we are, and I couldn't have done it without you." Claire's eyes softened, and she smiled, that same gentle, patient smile. "You've done it, Ethan. You've come a long way. And I'm proud of you." I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't afraid to hope, to dream, to reach for more. And I wasn't alone. I had Lily, and I had Claire, two people who had come into my life when I least expected it, and who had stayed quietly and steadfastly through every trial and triumph. As we sat there watching Lily play, I realized that the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. And no matter where it took us, I knew that we would face it together. The ring, which had once been a symbol of loss, was now a symbol of resilience. It was a reminder that sometimes we have to lose something to find something better. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the future. And for the first time, I felt ready to embrace it, fully and without fear. Because in the end, I hadn't just found stability. I had found connection. I had found family. And I had found a reason to keep moving forward.